Hey y'all, Miss Osborne back again with another flipped video. Today we're going to be talking about ancient India and China. Like Mesopotamia and Egypt, India and China were each home to an early rivers valley civilization. They developed their own governments, languages, customs based on where their location was and the religions that they were influenced by. The essential questions that we're going to answer in this video are: what features characterize the different civilizations in ancient India and China? And how did ancient Chinese religions influence their government? Golden Hawk historians will characterize the different features of ancient China and India. Golden Hawk historians will analyze the role that religion played in the development of ancient Chinese government. While you're watching, make sure that you're taking notes in either Cornell or outline format as we discussed in class. You may need to pause or rewind the video in order to ensure that you understand all the information and that you're taking good notes. The Indus Valley was one of the first civilizations in India. It was a society that developed along the northern plains along the Indus, Ganges, and Brahmaputra rivers and made the land very fertile. Monsoons, or seasonal winds that brought heavy rains, brought a lot of water to this region, making the grass very fertile. They depended on monsoon season for a lot of their water supply. The Indus Valley was this first civilization that started around 2500 BC. The first two major cities were the Harappa and Mohenjo-daro. The streets ran in a grid pattern, and there were lots of public works programs such as waste and water wells. At the center of the civilization was a citadel that enclosed buildings like the granary, a warehouse, and meeting halls, and then the houses were built outside of the citadel. The Indus Valley civilization mainly used a trade-based or barter economy. And although they had a writing system called Sanskrit, archaeologists are not able to read it. The Indus Valley civilization eventually disappeared, and no one really knows why. Sometime after 2000 BC, a brand new people, who we call the Aryan, meaning noble, ruled over much of India. A lot of what we know about the Aryans came from the Vedas, a sacred writing that was completed by the Aryans and included a lot of details about Aryan society and history. According to the Vedas, the people settled in villages that were smaller than the cities of the Indus Valley. The groups of villages were banded together under rajas, or a government-appointed leader, that kept the people safe from attack and also kept everything in order. The Vedic society was broken into 4 classes, or varnas, that played a particular role in society. The Brahmins were the priests and the teachers. Kshatriyas were the warriors and the rulers. Vaishyas were the common people that were like farmers and traders. And then the Sudras were the servants or slaves at the bottom. Within each varna, there was hundreds of subsections called the castes. So you might be more familiar with this because the caste system today is based off this system. Membership in a caste was determined what job one could hold and who people could marry. It's still kind of held around in India today. One of the dominant kingdoms of India was the Chandragupta Maurya, who was founded by the Mauryan Empire. The Chandragupta gained most of his power through his immense military. He was dependent on a strong centralized government in order to control his empire. His empire was divided into smaller districts that he let be led by relatives or his military generals. He passed on his throne to Ashoka in order to become a Jainist monk. Initially, Ashoka was a violent ruler, but after he converted to Buddhism that stressed peace, he encouraged peace and had his policies inscribed on rocks throughout his kingdom to encourage peace and religious toleration. Because they were inscribed on rocks, this also developed a sense of unity amongst his civilization. After Ashoka, the empire kind of declined. The Gupta Empire rose to power under Chandragupta. The Gupta rule became known as the Golden Age, in which there was a period of great cultural achievements, lots of peace and prosperity. One of the greatest cultural achievements was a lot of the Sanskrit literature that was written during the Gupta period. A lot of the art and architecture during this Gupta period is also known for being particularly colorful. Most spectacular are the temples and the monuments that are built out of the rock and the cliff faces. Gupta scholars are known for the Hindu-Arabic numerals, which we still use today, and it originated just from the concept of zero. Hinduism was one of the main religions in India. It's practiced by most people in India today, but it's so old its origin is hard to trace. It has no founder, but has been influenced by hundreds of cultures over the course of Indian history. The most basic belief in Hinduism is the belief in Brahman. Brahman is the figure up at the top in yellow, the eternal being that created and preserves the world. Everything in the world is simply an aspect of Brahman. After that, they believe in various manifestations of Brahman called devas. These are active versions of Brahman in the world. Ganesha is considered the Lord of Wisdom, for example. There are 3 major devas: Brahma, Vishnu, and Siva, the creator, the preserver, the one who keeps life going, and then Siva. Siva, the destroyer, is on the far right, excuse me. Hindus believe that the universe and everyone in it are in a continual pattern of birth, death, and rebirth, meaning that they believe in reincarnation or the ability to be reborn. A person's next life is determined by their karma or whatever they did in this life, and their whole goal is to reach moksha. Moksha is the ability to escape the cycle of rebirth. If you receive moksha, you are reunited with Brahman in the spirit world. In order to achieve moksha, you must fulfill your dharma. This is your spiritual duties and obligations. Your dharma is based on your social class and other life conditions. Hindus can read about their religious teachings in 3 texts. The Vedas. The Vedas are the sacred hymns of praise, and epics, writings that were inspired by the Vedas as well. The Upanishads are also thought to be revealed rather than written by people. The Upanishads are philosophical reflections on the Vedas, and they answer questions about the meaning of life. 2 major epic poems, the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, tell a story that reveal how to live life according to Vedic teachings. Within the most famous of these is the Bhagavad Gita, a poem that reveals a dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna, 2 of the devas, and this reveals many of the details of Hindu belief and philosophy. Because Hindu is so widely spread, there's not really one particular practice. Worship can take place anywhere, in temples, at home, in the street. People may offer food or drink to a particular deva that they particularly celebrate in their home or in a temple. Some Indians practice yoga to focus their bodies and try to help them to attain moksha. Part of the Hindu religion is a pilgrimage or a religious journey to a holy location. Many Indians traveled to the Ganges River, which is seen below as one of the festivals, thought to flow from the head of Vishnu. Jainism is another one of the major religions. A group of Hindus broke away and formed a new religion called Jainism, led by Mahavira. The Jains felt like the Hindus put a lot of focus on ritual, and that ritual was unnecessary, and so they thought that they achieved moksha by giving up all the worldly possessions and carefully controlling their actions. The center of Jain teaching is ahimsa, or non-violence. Jains carefully avoided hurting any living creature, from humans to insects. In the picture on the right, you can see that he has a mask over his face. Most Jain monks tried to avoid even inhaling any bugs by wearing masks. Many Jains were also vegetarians. They promised to tell the truth and to avoid stealing, and the most devout of all Jains gave up all of their possessions to become monks and nuns. The other main world religion in India was Buddhism. Buddhism was developed by Siddhartha Gautama, also who becomes known as Buddha. Gautama lived a very sheltered life, then free of hardship and suffering, and once he realized that people died and got sick, hello, real life, he suffered to find a way to overcome age and sickness to keep people from having to suffer. He wanted to seek enlightenment or a deeper spiritual understanding for 6 years, so he traveled from forests to cities and studied with gurus and teachers, but he didn't get any answers. Buddhists say that he meditated all night long after his travels under a tree until he became the enlightened one, or Buddha. Under Buddhism, there's 4 noble truths. The first one is that suffering is a part of human life. Number 2 is suffering comes from people's desires for pleasure and material goods, meaning that we suffer because we desire these things. 3, overcoming desire during life brings suffering to an end. And then the last one is that these desires can be overcome by trying to follow the Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path is broken into 8 parts, obviously. Right view, right attitude, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration, all meant to avoid hurting others, peace, and also to make sure that we are avoiding temptation. Buddha taught that those that followed the Eightfold Path would achieve nirvana, or a state of perfect peace in the world in which they'd be free from suffering. If you didn't achieve nirvana, you'd be reborn again and again and again until you were able to achieve it. The Eightfold Path is also known as the middle way, or simply to live in moderation, meaning that you avoid extremes of comfort and discomfort to try to seek nirvana. There are 3 main traditions in which Buddhism is formed: Theravada, Mahayana, and the Tibetan Buddhism. Buddhism spread to a lot of other parts of the world, including China, Korea, and Japan, and today it's a very diverse religion with a lot of different beliefs and practices. China's civilizations developed in river valleys in two main parts, the Changjiang, also known as the Yangtze, and then the Huanghe, also known as the Yellow River. The annual flooding of these two rivers made the land around them very fertile for farming. Much of China is pretty much covered in mountains, hills, and desert, which gave it a lot of protection from invasion. The first dynasty was the Shang Dynasty. That began in the Huanghe River Valley. During this time period, China was ruled by a great monarchy, or a government led by kings and queens. They also called them emperors. The monarchy surrounded themselves by a court of nobles, and then governors ruled into distant parts of the kingdom that might have been broken off by mountains. The Shang Dynasty was largely an agricultural society, and their religion focused on ancestor worship, in which they offered gifts to their deceased ancestors in order to keep them happy and fulfilled in their afterlife. Think like the movie Mulan. They sought the advice of their ancestors by going to oracle bones, in which they hit a hot rod onto a bone or a turtle shell, like seen on the right, and they are able to interpret the answers. The Shang became really, really gifted in their ironwork. The Zhou Dynasty came next, and they invaded and took over after the Shang Dynasty. It's divided into two major periods, Western Zhou and Eastern Zhou. In order to gain acceptance of the rulers from the Shang Dynasty, the Zhou Dynasty leaders said that they had the mandate of heaven. The mandate of heaven essentially stated that the gods support a just ruler and won't let anybody corrupt hold power, and so they were able to gain power through this because they just proved to people that they were just and they were the right ruler, and the gods wanted them to be the ruler. According to the Zhou, the Shang had been overthrown because they lost favor with the gods. This mandate of heaven was used to explain dynastic cycles, or the cycles of dynasty and the rise and fall of dynasties in China. The Zhou were really talented in crafting tools out of iron, and that helped them with their army and their military. The Zhou were the first to introduce coined money into China. Two of the main religions that influenced Chinese government were Confucianism and Taoism. Confucianism is based on the teachings of Western Zhou scholar named Confucius, or Confucius, and he taught that humans should treat each other with humanity, express love and respect, and he published his thoughts in a book called The Analects that gave an outline of rules for rulers, teachers, and other professions, and so he basically told rulers how to rule. Taoism focused on encouraging people to move away from the law of society and instead to focus on nature. You might see Taoism with the yin and yang signs. The yin and the yang is dark and light, saying that all aspects of nature must be in balance with one another, and you should seek to find full harmony with nature. The Qin dynasty came after the Zhou dynasty and was the first to create a unified Chinese empire. The new emperor took the title Shi Huangdi, meaning the first ruler. He ruled with a system of legalism that taught that a powerful and efficient government was key to maintaining order. Legalists rejected Confucianism, saying that they would rather have a powerful, strong government through force rather than through peace. There was a lot of stress on punishments and rewards in order to keep the power. Although harsh, the policies of Shu Huangdi unified China, he helped to set in place a lot of systematic reforms that ultimately unified China as a whole. The main achievement during Shu Huangdi's rule was the Great Wall of China that brought good defense into the south in order to defend against the Mongols. The Han Dynasty was one of the last dynasties, and he got permission to rule with the mandate of heaven. The Han Dynasty reached its power under Emperor Hudi, who was energetic and aggressive. He promoted economic growth by canals and new roads that helped to create more trade. The Han Dynasty under the Hudi developed a civil service system in which candidates for government had to pass an exam in Confucian in order to be considered. Also, under the Han Dynasty, they stressed filial piety, or obedience and devotion to parents and grandparents. Women didn't have very many privileges. Under the Han Dynasty, there's also a lot of rigid social classes. At the top was the emperor, then the nobles, and then the peasants. And then one of the most prized and carefully guarded trades was silk. It became Chinese biggest industry. Merchants traveled just to China along the Silk Road from Central Asia and the Middle East in order to get it. The Han Dynasty is also known for their advances in acupuncture that helped to relieve pain and cure diseases. After you've watched the video, make sure that you read back over your notes and to have all the necessary vocabulary. When the video ends, proceed to take the quiz for understanding that accompanies this video. That's going to count as a homework grade. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you in class.